Hey, what's up, party people? You have Survivor Teek over here. I'm here in the very scenic Idaho Falls. I'm right by the falls in the Japanese Friendship Garden, so I'm here to be all of your friends today. But you don't want to hear about my travels, you want to chat Survivor, and I'm here for the Contender analysis. So let's get right to it. Liana Storyline, she was voted out. It was one where she was never really an edge contender for any of the season. Some people had her high. She didn't really have a story. Her personal content was about making a big move. Her big move failed. This was the you can have this fake play, and so that obviously didn't work. She burnt too many bridges. She was kind of like a third for Danny and Deshawn, but she proved to be disloyal. Danny and Deshawn ultimately wanted to work back with her, probably just because she was a goat to get to the end. But she didn't have the connections. And a lot of her content was like very negative towards Xander. So that was like a whole situation within the show itself too. So I found that particularly interesting with her edit. But there's nothing about her edit that ever really gave her any type of real winner or contender analysis. And so like, that was just kind of how I went with her. So that was Liana's storyline. Let's talk about who we think are in the mix. Number one, I still have Xander, third week in a row. I think Xander has a pretty strong game. I think Xander is somebody who has gotten consistently good content from the merge forwards. He's somebody who had good content this episode. After a quiet one, he was able to chat about the Alliance of Four, his position within the Alliance of Four, how they're still a little bit new. He wasn't too sure if they would work together. And we really got the new majority Alliance perspective from Xander, of all people. Even though he didn't have a lot to say about the Shan vote out. He said he was part of the move. He concealed his idol yet again. He ended up using his extra vote. There's been some criticism on his edit that he didn't get a chance to actually explain it. But I don't think he had to explain it. They showed it. And you have one more vote, Liana. And like it really showed that he had the ultimate move to stamp out Erica's swing vote roll. That may come in handy if he's in the final three with Erica. And so he still has that idol in his pocket, and they keep letting us know about that on the show. I think they're showing his relationships. There was one important scene with Danny and Deshawn when Danny was even like, okay, like I need to go talk to Xander, showing that Xander is still the connection that Danny and Deshawn have to the Minority Alliance. So I think he has a pretty good edit. I think he has a good story. He chatted, so I'll get more into this whole scene about Liana at Tribal Council talking about how their blackness matters. It was really important. Liana spoke up. Deshawn spoke up. And it talked a bit about how they were bonded, but, they have to deal with their morality. And Xander had a bit of a soundbite to really say, look, like I don't deal with this. I'm very privileged, and this is something I don't have to think about and work through every day. But Danny kind of recognized him as a strong ally. And so Xander's had some positive content there. I just think he has, in this diversity season, he's the straight white male. And so it's hard to really create a very empathetic edit. It might be good gameplay beats storylines at the end, and that's a story we'll get. I'm thinking we might get like Xander's personal confessional storyline like on the finale episode, and that will help us understand why he ought to win at the end. He's still the fan favorite, so I think he still has a good edit overall. And it's just the strongest out of anybody left. Number two is Ricard. Ricard was a target, and he survived. Erica didn't flip, and so we got some suspense with him. He didn't have that strong of an episode, though. We heard him chat a little bit with Xander about how Erica may potentially flip and whether they actually trust Erica and Heather. Outside of that, he didn't win immunity. We got Danny's content from immunity instead. He had a bit of a quiet episode, especially after taking out Shan. I don't feel good about Ricard after this episode. It seems like when he makes a move, he's prominent. When he doesn't make a move, he's nowhere to be seen. So he's on number two, just because of the strength of his overall storyline, and especially the personal content he's been getting recently about his disability. We still know about his family situation, although I'd love to hear that come up again for his winner storyline. He's there at number two. The new favorite online is Erica. So I have her number three. I had her high from the first episode. I was trying to think back to Erica's edit and go through it. She had this like pretty early storyline about, hey, I'm a sheep. I'm ready to make some lion moves. and I'm gonna play an under the radar game, but you'll see me emerge. And like, this is kind of her emerging. Like, she had the swing vote, but she ultimately didn't use it, which I think was the correct move for her overall. But we did get Xander using that extra vote, showing she didn't really have that power to begin with. There's a lot of knocks on her edit. We don't understand her relationship with Heather. People are saying it's because Heather is just such a bad character. We don't want to see that. It's like, no. Like, we should understand Erica's key relationships. We don't really understand from her eyes, her perspective on the Alliance of Four that came up. We saw more from Xander's perspective. She just seems to have, like, not the most cohesive storyline, but she has content. We're getting more confessionals from her. She remains a target. She remains somebody who's important. She's still from the original Luvu, so she's still a connection between Danny and Deshawn and the rest. So Erica's there just kind of by default. She got decent content this episode. Number 4 is Deshawn. Deshawn slipping. He had a pretty bad negative episode. He overreacted about the Shan vote out, being called a snake. And that was brought up again and again. But he kind of redeemed himself when he talked about, the struggles that he faced when it came to the immunity. When it came to tribal council. He also had the content of the do or die, and we did get some good understanding about how he was dealing with that and how he was working with Danny and chatting about how that might be a good thing because he's able to survive. And he actually did survive too. So, and it was a pretty dramatic moment when Deshawn survived as well, when he picked the fire. So I think Deshawn's edit is okay. He'll really have to have picked up content in the next few episodes. I could see him really leaning on, playing a game between morality and strategic moves, but he hasn't really been like the main thrust of any strategic moves. He's been the wrong side of the vote. That's going to hurt him when it comes to the final as well. We only have 2 left. Number 5 is Danny, because Danny suddenly got some personal content about his dad, and we understood a little bit more of his gameplay too. We got some confessionals from him. He's trying to work with Xander. He's trying to work with Liana and Deshawn, and he's trying to make something happen. I could see Danny kind of have like the Dean edit, like the last minute push to get to the end. But really, we had so little from him in pre-merge, and we know so little about his strategy that I think there's no way that he's gonna win the game. Heather's 6. You don't get any real good Heather content. So that's kind of it. I still feel quite strongly about Xander. People on Reddit and whatever, they like Erica. She's gonna have to thread the needle, and I feel like Adam in Millennials versus Gen X kind of victory. I remember going into close to the finale, Adam had to get rid of David and Jay in the final 6 to be able to win, and there was no other way around it because those 2 would have beat him. And in fact, that's what he did, and he was able to play that I'm a less of a target than these 2, but I'm still the biggest target left. So he brought Ken and Hannah to the end and won. I think Erica needs to play a similar game. She needs to get rid of probably, even though we don't have a lot of Danny content, I think he's going to be a jury threat. And then Xander and Ricard are certainly jury threats. So she almost has to get rid of all 3 of them, get to the finals with Deshawn and Heather, and then advocate a strong game. Which, the edit's showing a little bit more for Erica, but that's just realistically difficult. I don't see that happening. We get a lot of negative content from her throughout the whole season about people wanting to get rid of her, about people calling her sneaky and things like that. People not really fully trusting her either in terms of this episode when it came to Ricard and Xander. So I'm not really falling for it. I really think it's Xander. If Xander is somehow ousted, I think it's Ricard is the winner. So we'll see what happens next episode. Cheers, everybody.